You are listening to the Gritty Podcast, where we talk about all things gritty. Welcome to the Gritty Podcast. I am your host, Brian Call, and today I'm joined by Brad Hunt, and we are back to our story about the Crow Killer, the saga of liver-eating Johnson, Jeremiah Johnson.
Yep.
And where we left off last week, he made peace with the
Crow Indians.
Yeah, with the Crow Indians after that long feud. He discovered that they had shown respect to Crazy Woman.
Yep.
When they had done so in defiance of the Blackfeet, who I guess killed her or made her blind.
Made her blind, yeah, right.
And also in reverence to their enemy, out of respect to their enemy. So they bury her, and Johnson has a change of heart in that, where he wants to have peace with them. So he gets some gifts, and he meets up with Graybeard and does this whole thing, and they make peace.
Yep.
So pretty wild, pretty crazy. Some other things happened. They killed some.
You had legendary. Well, it became to be legendary, I guess, of Portuguese Phillips.
That was in an earlier episode, not last week's, but yeah.
Oh, it was?
Yeah.
Dang, we're getting so caught up into this book.
I think last week they tricked those young.
Oh, that's right.
Those young
that's right.
Blackfeet
You're right.
into coming into their campfire,
Yep.
and they slaughtered like 17 young warriors who were like tracking them.
That's right.
Baited them in there and then killed them with their repeater rifles and guns and stuff.
Yep.
So yeah, so that's about where we're at. We'll get into the book. Before we do, we just got back from a quick trip. We went up to the mountains with my father.
Yep.
On a archery elk hunt. It was a short trip, like
slash mule deer hunt.
Mule deer.
Very, very unsuccessful mule deer wise.
We've never been there before. Brad, myself, and my dad bombed up to the mountain just for a few days, and you were only there for like 2.5 days.
2.5 days and lots of miles in 2.5 days.
Yeah, we hiked 10 miles 10 miles roughly into the area. We were remote. It was awesome. Got to see a lot of critters. Saw some good bulls, saw lots of elk, saw no big muleys, just young muleys.
Yep.
But on that trip, we really got to put the Go Hunt maps to use.
Yeah.
And I was running them in comparison to other maps I've used in the past, and there were things that stood out with the Go Hunt maps that were just heads and shoulders better, and some things that weren't. But I'll say this, that for the price, it's a phenomenal deal what the maps can do. And it's also, for me, at this point, the satellite imagery, and this is funny because we've had some issues where some satellite imagery that we have seen compared to another map system didn't.
Yeah.
Other map systems. Like your satellite imagery of the Go Hunt, something didn't download before you left.
Right.
Because mine was
impeccably
epic.
As I'm sitting here, we were looking at it, and I'm like, what the heck? And all of a sudden it goes from somewhat being like I can't quite see the clarity to...
That's in the last 5 minutes.
Yeah. It was like, went to clear. So I was like, I'm not sure. I downloaded it days before, but...
Something wasn't... And that's the thing with the Go Hunt. It's a few months old now. And all the little bugs are being worked out. But when I was on the mountain, I just kept going to Go Hunt for that satellite imagery because it was so much better than my other map systems. And I was able to really leverage it. It's a no-brainer, the interactive interface there. So I'm not sure what's going on because some of the people on our locals community had mentioned, we're seeing it a little bit clearer on this other map system, the satellite imagery. And I'm like, I don't know how you're getting that because I've been on like 3 hunts now, and my Go Hunt map satellite imagery is superior.
Well, and I will say this, like all spring, throughout the summer, I've been using it, and where mine wasn't as clear, that normally has not been the case at all on any of the Go Hunt maps. Normally, it's like the satellite imagery is, I would say, 2 or 3 times better, if not more.
And mine, however mine downloaded or was working, it was what it needed to be on the same exact hunt.
Right.
And so I'm not sure what happened.
Not sure
I
either.
talked to GoHunt, and they had mentioned that there was a couple 6-week periods where they had done some updates, and people didn't get the resolution that they should have. So if you were one who got the map and it wasn't like what we said, go back and refresh it or update the app, because I'm telling you, after a lot of use, it's better. It's just clearer.
It's much better.
So check that out. Because at first I'm like, am I a liar? Did something go wrong there? And we went back and looked at some of the other competitor maps, and I downloaded the highest resolution and so on.
Yep.
And no, the Go Hunt map is really nice. That satellite imagery. Now, some of it I want it to be changed a little bit. I'd like to see the rivers are a little harder to see. They're not imposed on the satellite imagery. There's some things that aren't quite there yet, but every week it's getting added. The app is updating constantly.
Yeah.
It wasn't as snappy. I have to say, like, I was heading toward a certain spot in the dark with my dad, and I wanted to arrive at this one spot at this certain time, and it's so dark, I had a hard time knowing where I was at, so I was using my maps, and it failed to update my position timely in the Go Hunt map.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got to my location and passed it, because as I looked at the map, it said I wasn't there yet. And then all of a sudden it updated, and I'm like, now I'm 50 yards past it. I'm like, dang it. And I had to circle back. So, and so as it's a new map system, and as all those little kinks are worked out, I'm blown away within 5 months how much it's evolved. If you don't have it, here's the deal. You should have more than one map system, period. Because you never know. Each map system, we have like 5 map systems.
Right.
And you should kind of have a few, because each one tells you a little bit different. We're working with GoHunt a lot, and I think over time they're going to have that, one ring to rule them all type app, because they just keep doing what we want them to do with the features and the tools that are being added, and the snappiness of the app. So I think it will be there. But regardless, right now I feel like the satellite imagery is indispensable. It's such a pleasure to have that versus not. And I just couldn't leverage the satellite imagery on the other map systems. I was like, where we were hunting, it was like almost useless. I just stuck with Topo.
Yeah.
So GoHunt really has done a good job there, but it's only $30. If you use the code GRIDDY over at GoHunt, you'll pay $50 for the map, but you'll get a $20 in-store credit with the code GRIDDY.
Right.
That's pretty killer, because it's only $30, and you get all 50 states, including Alaska. So my friend Chris Tobias, who we are going to moose hunt with here in a few days, he's like, dude, I've been using it up in the mountains, and I'm using it in Alaska, and they finally got Alaska added to the whole map system, and he's like, this is good. The satellite imagery is like, he's like, my other map systems, it's covered in the damn snow. He's like, the satellite imagery has a whole bunch of snow on it, or clouds, and I can't see what the hell the map is. And you're not getting that. The GoHunt satellite imagery is really able to leverage. So that's cool. So for $30, check it out. Use the code GRIDDY over there, and get that in-store credit, and get the map system, and start playing around with it. And I don't think you'll be disappointed for that $30 value. I think you're going to really appreciate it. Plus, it downloads high res.
Yeah, no matter what.
No matter what.
Yep.
And it does it all fast.
Well, and you have the availability to download as little or as much as you want. I mean, you can literally take a whole
the other ones you pick like 5 miles wide, 10 miles wide, different resolutions. Right. With GoHunt, I can just say, I want this whole massive area.
Yep, you can do like a quarter of a state basically, and like have that one, and you're done. Or that whole unit, and you can download everything.
How many times have you got out there and the area you need,
you forgot to add a layer,
150 miles wide, or you forgot to add a layer?
Yeah,
and you're like screwed.
Yeah, you can literally go one click of the button. So it's really like a 2-part series if you want to, but you can download all your layers, and then you can download all like your satellite and topography.
And again, if you do that across multiple maps, then you got backup on backup.
Yes.
Which you got that redundancy. And then you grab an Anchor 21 watt 513 solar panel.
Good luck finding it.
Dude, I used that solar panel all week to charge my stuff and my dad's stuff all day. And I used one dark energy battery pack, Poseidon. And now they have the neon orange. And that thing is so easy to see. It's cool. But I could charge all my stuff. Plus, my dad and I watched movies a couple nights a week for hours when we were stuck in the tent. And I'm telling you, the power, it charges my stereo pin, my headlamp, my phone with the map systems.
Your Poseidon when it does die.
My Poseidon, it just recharges that on days. So here's something, Brad, that you weren't there, and I wanted to test this thing. The Poseidon was dead. Completely, my power bank battery pack was dead. And we needed to hike. We had some ground to cover that day. And my phone was also close to being dead, and so was my stereo pin. So I'm like, okay, I need to charge, but I can't. Sometimes what we do is we take the solar panel, we set it up at base camp, and then we go hike 8-9 miles the day and go on some hunts, spike hunts and stuff. And then that night we come back and I have a full battery pack that's charged. But I didn't have any power on me at the time. So I was like, I need to take my charger with me.
Yeah.
So I strapped the solar panel to my pack, and I just had the two panels facing forward, and then the top panel was across the lid of the pack. And I just tied it off on the front and lashed it on there, and then had it down, and then I had the dark energy charger battery in a pocket, and then I just walked around. I went around for 4.5 or 5 hours, and it fully charged the battery pack. And my stereo pin. All I did was walk around in and out of shade, in and out of sun. I didn't do anything special. I just had my little day pack set up, and I just hunted as I would normally hunt. And I was worried that because it's not sitting still and in the sun and stuff, and I'm moving in and out of shade, that it just wouldn't get much of a charge that day. Totally didn't work that way. That was the day that we hiked all the way to the top, where the bench, where the lily pads were, and you could see how much shade there was in and out, in and out.
Thick timber.
And yet, it was enough. It was hot, bright, sunny day. But, dude,
freaking solar panel
crushed it.
Blows me away because, like, we've used it, you and Lampers, we've all used it where it's like
unlimited power.
Cloudy outside, you throw it in the tent, or just outside the teepee, and you have your...
We keep talking about it, and everybody's like, I can't find it. It's not available. All my friends are calling me, and I'm like, look, I don't know what to tell you.
Right.
You want it.
If you find the 21-watt 3-panel, like it has to be the 513, it has to be the 21-watt.
That model. It's like 14 or 16 ounces.
Right. It's right around a pound.
Yeah.
Don't get the 3.5 or 4-pound one. Like, that's not the same one.
Chris Tobias, I think he bought his used on a refurbished eBay site. And they shipped him a used one.
Yeah.
That was like new. The only ones I'm finding online are used ones. So
I mean, the thing is, it's
they also went from $65 to like $85.
Yeah. I mean, they've definitely proven their worth to us.
I'm impressed. So I only hope they get them back in stock soon, because this is a game changer.
Right.
I hate to use that word. I don't use it casually.
No. And we don't have a code or nothing that goes for that, but it's
I do with Dark Energy.
Yeah.
I highly recommend their power banks.
But it's like
they're
that
durable,
solar
tough.
panel is...
They're impervious to cold, which most chargers die in the cold.
Yeah.
This one holds the battery power, which is critical for our activities.
Yeah.
We're not summertime hikers.
Nope.
So check that out. Check out the Go Hunt. The battery system is sweet because I use my maps like mad. I use my phone for so much, even watching films, and that sucks power. But I just didn't have any
when
problem.
when you're in a new area and you haven't had the chance to really scout it and to spend time in there, I find myself using the maps 10 times more than if obviously I'm in an area that I kind of know.
Right.
But you're always on your phone looking at the maps when you're in a new area.
Yeah. You start to see patterns. You're like, a wallow there, trail here.
Yeah.
This connected to there. This cut went there. Oh, I see. These animals are never here. There's no sign, but they go this route here, and then they go here, and then they feed here, and they bed here, and you just start putting all the pieces together. It's cool.
Exactly. It's going to work out.
So, anyway, we have gone on a long tangent just to say, go check out Go Hunt. They're a great partner. Check out their maps. Can't recommend it enough. Use the code GRITTY for both their gear shop and for their maps, and you get different deals, different discounts over there for that. All right, White Chief of the Shoshone. This is the next chapter. So, Gray Bear. I said Gray Beard, didn't I? It's Gray Bear.
Yeah, Gray Bear.
Gray Bear is the crow that Jeremiah Johnson met privately and made peace with.
Yep.
Passed the message on that he wants peace. Gray Bear and his braves did carry the word that the Crow Killer had buried the hatchet with the Absaroka. So the Absaroka is the Indian name of the crow.
Right, correct.
News so unexpected spread like wildfire, with diverse speculations and rumors in its wake. Grizzled mountain men reserved judgment till all developments might be reported. Fur traders, more cynical, assumed that Johnson's motives were selfish and that the deadly enemy of the Crows, after so many years of open warfare, would now turn to deceit and to murder in secret. Black Elk, a Sioux chief on the Rosebud, tried to turn the news against his Indian enemies. The livers of the Crows are diseased, he proclaimed. Eating them has caused Dapiep Absaroka to become as cowardly as the Crows themselves. He went on particularly to invite Johnson to sample Sioux livers, or at least the innards of their brothers, the Cheyennes, should he wish once again to be strong as the bull buffalo. Wow. Quite a bit of
He's a little hatred.
making peace with these guys. Has pissed off a few of the native Indians. Black Elk. So this is Black Elk of the Lakota on the Rosebud, chief on the Rosebud. He tried to turn it against him. The livers of the Crows are diseased. Eating them has caused liver-eating Johnson to become a coward, just like the Crows themselves. He ate the Crows and became a coward like the Crows. And then he's like, go ahead, eat the livers of us or the Cheyenne, should you wish to be strong as the buffalo again.
A little hatred there towards the other tribe.
Johnson, when he heard the stream of stories coming into Hawley's, chuckled happily and said he liked people to speculate on his next move. You can tell old Black Elk I might get his liver next, he told a friendly Cheyenne. Then he saddled, mounted, and rode off toward his Flathead relatives in the Bitterroots. Show me get a picture of a flathead. I want to look at, how what their heads look like exactly. I remember seeing it years ago, but I haven't looked it up in a long time because they put a rock on the baby's head. I want a little background on that and what it might look like too, because it's wild.
I mean, there's these drawings or whatever, and it has a really flat from their forehead.
Yeah,
and on, but.
There's a rock. There it is in the cradle there.
Right. So it's on the...
Look it up on Wikipedia there, or some other informational site like the Flathead Nation. Long ago now, sometime after securing 2 Shoshone scalps from their chief, the Fox, Johnson himself had been voted a Shoshone chief. That circumstance and Big Antone Sepulveda's desire to see the liver eater before setting out on a trip to California led to Johnson's next adventure and Big Anton's last. Dun 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 dun. Even while Johnson rode toward the Flatheads, Big Anton and Pancho Robles were riding toward him from Apache country. Perhaps a tinge of gray could be seen now in Anton's black beard. His new companion was cousin of that fighter whose place he had taken, the late Apache Joe. Riding together on their powerful Californian horses, Anton's a big black with a white star, Pancho's a 3-year-old bay mare from San Luis Obispo. The 2 men were well matched in size.
So it says the Flathead Indians were also known as the Salish tribe from Montana. So
out of Montana. So they were traveling. They have teepees like the Lakota.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Lewis and Clark came upon them in 1806.
So they were called the Flathead Indians by Lewis and Clark when they came upon them.
Yep. Yeah, it was because their tops of their heads were not pointed like those of the neighboring tribes who practiced vertical head binding. Salish was, So the Salish is the meaning of the people.
Yeah.
Crazy.
So what do they do? Keep.
I'm looking.
I'll keep going with the story. So the two men were well matched in size. So, like Big Anton, Robles wore a heavy black beard and carried a rifle, knife, and 6 shooters. But Anton had again chosen a companion with virtues and skills complementary to his own. The former vaquero who rode beside him now was feared for his yaqui blood. Yaqui blood. And for the most potent of all his weapons coiled in the horn of his saddle, this riata, made of plaited horsehair no more than a quarter-inch in thickness, with a sheen like China silk and the appearance of a child's plaything, was as deadly and resilient as a live snake. Though its entire 75 feet could have been coiled and tucked into a lady's reticule, it had mastered the Sonora grizzly. So he has a lasso. A riata?
Maybe that's where the name Ariat came from.
Like a thin silk-like China silk appearance of its 75-foot coil had mastered a Sonora grizzly.
We don't call it a lasso, people. It's a rope. No.
Like my grandfather has. There's a story of my grandfather, great grandfather, lassoing a bear.
Mm-hmm.
And the horses were so good, and they were so good at horsemanship.
Well, I know guys that have done it.
They just lassoed the bear, and they just like he just kept it out of the reach of the horse for hours.
I know guys that have roped bears, and I know guys that have. And there's like actually just like 2 weeks ago, I saw on Instagram that these two guys had roped a mountain lion. Yeah, like had it stretched out. But I know guys that have roped elk too.
You're such Idaho hick.
We used to rope, like, not off horses, but we used to rope elk and deer off the haystacks. And I tell you, like, a doe can shred a brand new pair of coveralls real fast. And you are bruised, looks like you got in a bar fight, like you get the crap kicked out of you. It's fun stuff you do in a small town.
Oh, boy. The two riders stumbled in on preparations for a fiesta one afternoon in a small village under the Sangre de Cristo Peaks. So that's Colorado, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Area?
I think so.
Children looked wide-eyed at their silver-mounted saddles and bridles. Young men forgot for a moment the evening's dance on sight of the paired giants and the long knives in their belts. Old men estimated the braided scalps looped through their plaited horsehair, Espanol Diablo, they muttered to themselves, and bowed respectively to this warrior whose name they knew and his companion. At the far end of the small village street, the two riders came on festivities of special interest to them. Here, in an open space some 50 feet in diameter, many young men were throwing knives at the crudely drawn heart of a target in the shape of a man. The riders reined in and sat their horses to watch the contestants' prowess. One young man had the best of the competition, for he placed all his throws close to the heart and a few actually inside. Robles spoke to an old man looking on, and the old man nodded with less evidence of fear than of anticipation. Robles dug out a coin, handled it to the old man, and left to him the necessary commands that the young men stop their throwing. Big Anton, trying till now to catch Robles' eye and call him off from these arrangements, sat still in his saddle and awaited the time for his demonstration of skill. The old man drew a circle around Robles' coin, then stepped back and motioned the young men to one side. Big Anton drew his knife and held it a moment in the dancing sunlight for all to see. An Arkansas toothpick with damascened blade, a full 16 inches in length, point backward and hilt toward the target in the knife man's huge palm. Now his hand swept back and shot forward, and the knife whipped toward the target and to the exact center of the outline coined. The old man stepped forward to retrieve the blade, but before he could do so, the slender loop of Robles' riata noosed the weapon and, answering a flick of Robles' wrist, sent the bowie sailing into its owner's hand. That's a cool trick.
Yeah, right.
Stabs it and then ropes it and then yanks it back and catches it.
I might be able to do that.
I mean,
No.
I mean, you've practiced that for sure, right? Like,
Yeah.
those guys, I've read about, like, when Kit Carson came across the West in the book Blood and Thunder, and I've heard some other stories where the Spanish on their horses were incredible riders, but also incredible with the rope and what they could do with it.
Right.
And when I was hanging out with Pedro, and we were watching some PBR bull riding
Oh, that's my kind of stuff.
on the TV, he was mocking it
Right.
with full blown full gusto, as the Spanish
Right.
do. And he was making fun of it, and he was like, "This
The
is."
Spaniards are cruel.
He's like, "This is real bullfighting." And then he proceeded to show me pictures of famous bullfighters,
Yeah.
like wrestling, doing things dangerous with bulls. And he showed me a picture of a dude. I think the horn went through the bottom of his jaw, through his face, and popped out his eyeball.
Right. Right.
And that horn was up, gouging out his eye, and the bull hooked him like that and then chucked him.
Well,
And he said the dude is out there still fighting bulls and was one of the
I believe it.
top
I believe it,
bullfighters or something like that.
Those Spanish fighting bulls are no joke. I mean, we use them here in the U.S. as well. Like you guys, Cody Webster used to do, and you got tons of guys that do that stuff.
He said our bulls are fat and obese and slow
They are.
and aren't very maneuverable.
Again, this
and
is why I like
dangerous.
the bullfighters. They use, like, they call it BFO. I believe it's BFO.
Yeah.
But all of them are using, the Spanish fighting bulls, and they're mean. They're freaking mean.
Dude. So anyway, it was kind of funny to see these cultures collide, but I do recall these stories where they have those lances.
Yeah.
And the Spaniards in Texas or California and stuff, they would just like slaughter a whole company of men from horseback, and they just dance their horses around and kill these men with 12-foot poles or something.
Right.
And they didn't have a chance. Without guns, they were just done for.
Right.
And these horseback riders and lancers could just eliminate people like that. Plus, they used ropes too. These riatas and stuff, and they'd rope guys and then stab them. One guy would rope here, one guy would rope him, and then he can't move, and then they just come up and stab him. Like, you got to be pretty technical and good at all these things. Like, it's pretty amazing what human
roping
beings
is a skill. Like,
can be.
some people are really good at it. All my cousins can attest that they absolutely hate me because growing up all the years, I had a rope in my hand. Like, I hung my cousin from a tree one time and a bunch of stuff.
Yeah,
proficient with a
interesting.
rope in my hand.
So it says he caught it in his hand. The whole performance was repeated with machine-like precision some dozen times. Finally, Anton Sepulveda wiped the blade with the end of his serape, and Robles recoiled his riata. Both riders headed off now for the mountains, on their way to find Liver-Eating Johnson, leaving the afternoon's onlookers to their astonishment. Now, while Johnson seldom spoke of his own adventures, he often told of Big Anton Sepulveda's skills and escapades, as he was told of Mariano Modeno's. The whole tale of how Anton picked up fellow mountain men on his way north, Arkansas Pete Arnold, Hatchet Jack Ireland, Mad Mose, Mariano, Bear Claw Chris Lapp, Wild Ben, Arapaho Joe, was well worth the telling. Arkansas Pete had his camp a couple of miles west of the Spanish Peaks. Unlike most trappers, and surely unlike Johnson, Pete wore heavy cavalry boots, no matter what the discomfort in summer. Indeed, Pete was sure on the day when Big Anton came by that his boots had cost him his life, for he had just now had to take them off. That day when Big Anton came by, he sat cooling his feet in a small rivulet that ran down from the mountain with just enough murmur to muffle their noises. Pete expected no invaders. He sat talking to himself, as most mountain men did, and removing the claws from a fresh grizzly pelt to save for Bear Claw Chris, his pony, a Comanche Mustang, grazed contentedly nearby. They're just talking about the claws. Now he broke off, looked warily about him, and then, as if to answer himself, began again. It's a good thing, though, that I got in a good shot of old Arkansas. Could be cold meat now. I can't understand what the hell these mountain men are saying. Pete looked at his pony, which had one ear cocked. The pony looked back at him. Pete wiggled his toes in the cool water, shrugged against his sun-baked shirt, and thought to look around him once more. But a pebble fell somewhere behind him, and the pony shied. Clearly, Pete was ambushed. Yet now he could not move. Though his rifle lay next to his hand, no enemy would let him raise the weapon or even look around. "Whoever there, come on up," said Arkansas Pete. He heard a low, rumbling chuckle, then a loud laugh. "I will give you 3 times to guess who is here, senor." Pete began to pull on his boots coolly and methodically without glancing around. "One's enough," he said. You're big Anton, and you's got a Mexican greaser with you." Where the Rio Dolores, or the River of Sorrow, joins the Rio Colorado in southeastern Utah, the La Salle Mountains were long a favored meeting place of mountain men. Riding west and north in search of companions, Big Anton Sepulveda and Rancho Robles and Arkansas Pete Arnold found the La Salle camping ground just as 4 trappers there were striking tents. Hatchet Jack, blah, blah, blah. He meets all the guys. "Where's Joe?" Anton dismounted and lifted the old man's bear hug. He said, "Joe was killed by Apaches. 26 of them, including 2 chiefs, have since followed him." So he avenged him by killing 26 Apaches and 2 chiefs after they killed Apache Joe.
So here, I don't know, it says the Native American group known as the Flathead Indians, in fact, did not practice head flattening, but were named as such in contrast to other Silesian people who use skull modification to make their heads appear rounder.
Oh, so they just left their heads alone mostly?
That's what I'm kind of getting.
But the other Indians didn't. They did stuff to make their heads more round.
More round, or like, that's why
Shaped
it talks when Lewis and Clark came across, most of the other Indians, they had like a cone-shaped head, and then when they got to what they call the flathead, the Salish, they didn't. They had more of a flathead.
Okay. Weird. So they all get together, and that night, while the flames of the campfire leaped to canyon walls, it was agreed that with trapping season still months ahead, all 7 mountain men should ride together to see the crow killer. Jack and Mariano were spotted to take turns on guard till morning, but there were hours of talk for these lonely. They hang out. They talk of recent deaths among other mountain men. Lobo Ned burned alive at the stake by the Cheyennes. Mm-hmm. Talk of mountain men who took vengeance on their friends' killers, of Mormon Jake, who Bearclaw said drunk their red coon's blood, of old Hatcher and the way he gagged him and tied him in trees, head down, and above all of Liver-Eating Johnson, the crow killer. Talk finally from Mad Mose, whose life work had not been trapping but simply the killing of Indians, who his 6 hearers believed had no memory of any time before his own scalping, because he'd been scalped, so he's just been on a vengeance since day one. Mose had taken on himself the avenging of Lobo Ned. "I followed them Cheyennes for a week," Mose said, "and caught up with them on Laramie Plain. I caught him asleep and killed the 2 guards with my hatchet. Then I stabbed 16 in the guts, helped them all and chopped off their arms. Scalped them all and chopped off their arms. He relived the bloody scene with mounting excitement. I left him running around in circles, wishing now I'd have burned him." Huh. Dude, these are... I mean, that's just... there's just no word but evil.
Right.
There's just some evilness there. Just some animalistic... "Nah, leave him alive," cried Hatchet Jack. "I used to kill him and then cut him up. Now I chop him into pieces in hopes that he'd live."
Jeez. Just cruelty.
So, I mean, it's going both ways, though.
Yeah.
Don't make no mistake about it. The idea that the Native people were... here's the thing that bothers me. I'm going to read Daniel Boone's story. Mm-hmm. It's really interesting. That'll come up on another future series. It's one of my favorite books. But the thing is, when it comes to these situations, this bothers me a lot. When people judge other people based on groups, that's BS.
Right.
The humans are individuals.
Yep.
I don't give a damn if you're some Christian person, non-Christian person, if you're Indian, if you're black, if you're white, if you're Spanish. As a whole, just because you're part of a group, you are not virtuous.
Yeah.
You're just that's just where you might have come from, but that doesn't make you virtuous by you're an individual.
Yeah.
Your actions and who you are make you one way or another.
Exactly.
And when you look at humanity as people as individuals, instead of as a whole group, like all the Lakota are this, all the French are this,
yeah.
all the Cheyenne are that. No, it's completely wrong. You have the line of good and evil runs through the center of every human heart. You have people in the white community that are absolutely kind, generous, and amazing people, brave, fighters, so on, and you have downright evil, twisted, and sick people.
Yep.
And that is across the board in every other community as well. You can have some generalizations where certain groups of communities preach and teach and promote a certain debauchery or character that as a whole can kind of make the whole group
right
a little darker than, let's say, this other group that's a little more virtuous. But still, that's more of a condition of circumstance than it is individual heart.
Yeah.
And so to me, again, it goes back to people are people. And if you think that all the native people, for example, were good and all the white people that came across were bad, you're naive as hell.
Right.
You're completely clueless. If you think that all the native people were bad and all the white people were good, you're an idiot.
Yeah.
The evil and the atrocities that they committed upon one another, and sometimes in grief and vengeance and anger and revenge, is dark. And it happened on both sides. Both sides. When Daniel Boone, you hear the stories and what they did to people, what the native did to people at that time, and also what the white people did to the native people. It's despicable on both sides.
Yeah.
And let's be real. You're going to experience that across the board, across all nations. Human against human.
Exactly.
You kill my wife and kids in a brutal fashion, I might turn into a monster who kills you and your kids in a brutal fashion.
Right.
There has to be, and to me, and I'll just say this, without God, anything's permissible.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that I think would prevent me is a faith in a higher being and a greater purpose that would prevent me from declining to the level of absolute savagery on someone who committed savagery against me.
Exactly.
No mercy. Like the bitterness and the anger of what you've done to my daughter. You rape and you murder and you torture her. I want to do things to you that are
unfathomable,
are just dark.
Yeah.
So I see where these things can come from, these emotions and these actions. And it is not that is a human function, not a people, not a tribe, not
civilization
a group.
Or a group.
And that's where group identity is so toxic.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, it don't matter where you're
Everybody's
from.
making an individual choice.
It's an individual choice.
Yep.
And you have to look at humanity that way.
Right.
Otherwise, we'll always descend into tribalism and decay, So anyway, there's my rant. So these guys are telling some nasty stories, okay? And they know their lifespans are going to be short. Like, they got to know.
Yeah.
And some of them do make it year over year over year. But dude, I mean, you can't talk about these events and this blood feud. And he says 26 of them, including 2 chiefs, have since died since they killed Apache Joe, in revenge.
Right.
Like, these guys have long-standing blood feuds, and
I mean, they're straight killers. Like, Fighters.
I don't know that I want to say killers,
right.
In the sense that, it's like the law of the wild in the West. You kill mine, I kill yours.
Right.
And you better, or there won't be respect and there's no end to it,
right.
know. But I don't know, dude. I don't know. This is just so makes you grateful for modern civilization, but it also ought to make you think twice before you judge people in the past.
Right.
Because
and before you judge somebody by what may be family members or culture or whatever it may be,
True.
Instead of judging somebody by what happened in the past of who they're associated with,
But also, if you travel back in time, you don't get to have a lot of what you have right now is a luxury belief
Right.
or a luxury behavior.
Yeah.
Because you live in a modern society where these sorts of actions aren't necessary to stay alive.
Yeah.
And so you sit here in this modern, you shouldn't have guns and
it wasn't
this and that.
It wasn't
it's like,
that long ago. I mean, you're talking less than 200 years.
oh yeah.
I
mean, you could go back to World War I and II and you could go back 10 years,
right?
5 years, and there's places in the world where this is still more along the norm than not.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I mean, the world is a dark place and a beautiful place.
Yes.
As the morning sun topped the La Salles, the 7 mountain men rode northward through the rough, wild country of Shibrekchit and the Utes, Yampa Utes. Skirting the Uintas, they rode through Johnson's old hunting grounds and on into the Wasatch Range. Now, once again, they picked up recruits. Wild Ben at a summer camp in Weber River and Arapahoe Joe after they crossed the Bear River and hit the trail to Fort Hall. Bear Claw was riding advance as the mountain men headed on along the banks of the Blackfoot. By all appearance, the old man had eyes only for the matched set of bear claws he presented him by Wild Ben. That was presented him by Wild Ben. So the Indian beckoned alternatively, throwing out his hand in signs of friendship. Shoshone, Hatchet Jack said, and he rode toward an Indian, loosing his favorite weapon. The others followed at a distance, covering Jack with their rifles. Hatchet Jack prided himself on his knowledge of Indian tongues. When he rejoined his companions, he knew of a going war between tribes and had pretty well conceived that the adventurous part therein the mountain men could play. That's Wani's son, he said, that Hatcher saved from the big cat. He says the Nez Perce has killed Shoshone women and children out gathering roots on the prairie. He says they sneaked up and killed Wani and some of his braves. He says he wants Liver-Eaton's help. Thought maybe Liver-Eaton was with us. So basically, these are back to the Flatheads and the Shoshone who had killed the Crow warriors the 50 warriors that came to trade. And this is the son of one of those chiefs that got attacked by a mountain lion but was saved by Hatcher, who shot the mountain lion. It says that Bear Claw remarked that perhaps the 9 mountain men could now recruit Johnson to fight along with them against the Nez Perce since he had been Wani's friend. Liver-Eaton can't hardly pass this one up. The Indian here says Liver-Eaton was voted a chief of their Shoshone 10 years ago. So Liver-Eaton Johnson is a chief. His friends knew, as chief, his friends knew Johnson would be honor-bound to take up his Shoshone fight. There was some astonishment expressed among mountain men that we'd be helping diggers. Pancho Robles began to see Big Antone's trip to California postponed indefinitely by their action was at once resolved. Rollicking along, they crossed through the plains. It says that they, they find Liver-Eating Johnson. They could, it says, skipping ahead, more than mountain men wanted to fight beside Liver-Eating Johnson against the Nez Perce. Young Wani brought 20 excellent braves. Johnson accepted. Guess I got me an army. So they meet up with him. They get him. They have, the Crow Chief, Big Antelope, offers 30 warriors, 20 of the Shoshone, and the mountain men. So Nez Perce no good at fighting on the ground, he generalized, but these varmints were going after their kind and their riding horses. So let's see. Now and then more volunteers came in. They start gathering these men. The 8th day after Big Antone's party came in from the south, the expedition got underway. The 160-odd fighting men spread out in groups. The Utes rode ahead, but with Mariano or Pete ever following close. Each party of Indians rode as a body, distinct from other tribes. Only the mountain men rode out of formation singly sometimes. At night, there were 5 separate campfires. Now Mariano took over almost entirely the watch over the Utes' comings and goings. It was soon the mountain men's joke that none of them had ever seen Mariano sleep. So he doesn't have any trust for the Utes that are part of this group.
Right.
Long after guards were posted and most of the trappers bedded down, his lithe figure darted between firelight and outlying darkness. Come morning, his flashing black eyes seemed to have observed all the night's developments. Come evening once again, after the third day's hard ride, he squatted like an Indian, listening for a while, perhaps to help other trappers exchange of tales. He just never quit going on guard.
He probably sleeps during the day while he's riding his horse. It is possible.
They had no idea how many Mariano had killed of people because he didn't put notches in his stuff like the other mountain men. He just kept it clean. So, yeah, it says that Mariano would sharpen his blade on Pete's cavalry boots after he went to sleep, using the leather to strop his knives.
Right.
Traveling south and west, the Shoshone's Avengers crossed the Lemhi River into rough country bordering the Nez Perce. That's Utah or Idaho. Isn't it?
Idaho, yep.
Whites and Indians alike put out vedettes, in addition to the Utes who still rode ahead. After they crossed the middle fork of the Salmon, Wani described from his scouts' reports the foe's position. What a wild time, dude. Just to go from Wyoming to Montana to Idaho to Colorado, the Sangre de Cristos, just cruising all over, days and days to get places. So different. Perhaps he had not mistrusted them enough, nor realized in full. Let me see. Let me go back a little bit. I went a little too far. Whites and Indians alike put out vedettes. Okay. Now Johnson sent the three Utes far ahead to reconnoiter round the main Nez Perce encampment on the east side of the Weiser River. Perhaps he had not mistrusted them enough, nor realized in full their capacity for trickery, nor would Johnson himself, so skilled in directing his own course away from ambush, prove equally skilled in choosing a safe course for an entire command. The mountain men and their Crow and Flathead and Shoshone allies rode on slowly toward the meeting place arranged with the Utes. Next day, when the sun was straight overhead, the leader of the three Utes returned to announce that the unwarned village lay open to attack. He then rode abruptly away at right angles from the expedition's course and signaled that all should follow into the mouth of the wide canyon. Johnson raced ahead of his fighting men, let them ride for a time, but soon held up his hand for a halt. Apparently he mistrusted the lay of the land, or perhaps the Utes' headlong dash into unscouted terrain. He raised in his stirrups to sniff at the light breeze coming up out of the canyon's mouth. Suddenly he shouted, warning, "This a trap!" He reined his own horse behind a boulder. At once the mouth of the canyon and the approach along both sides erupted in a terrific fusillade. None of the mountain men needed to be told what they were up against, that their foe was armed with Spencer repeating rifles. Only their own constant instinctive awareness of nearest shelter saved them now. Only their skill as individual fighting men saved them from Johnson's failures in tactics. At that, one bullet in the first fusillade went through Mad Mose's chest. One Flathead brave and 3 of the 28 Shoshone were killed on their horses, and several others were wounded on their way to cover. But the bulk of Johnson's party did find hiding place in the rocks, and when the main body of Nez Perces, splendidly mounted on their war ponies, thundered out of the canyon, they were met by a withering return fire. They too had miscalculated. Cut down almost at once, themselves the ambushed, they left to their tribesmen stationed at the canyon's mouth only the task of killing what invaders they could before their own certain deaths. Perhaps in the general confusion, Big Anton Sepulveda did not realize where the greater danger now lay. In any event, he stood to shoot at the last of the mounted Nez Perces, but as fire belched from his 6-shooters, a Nez Perce behind a rock to the left of him took quick aim. Big Anton stumbled and fell heavily. Pancho Roble, still on his mount, as became a Californio, surged from where behind a big boulder. He too had been firing. Dropping both pistols, he seized his riata. The loop snaked out through the gun smoke and settled over the head of the Nez Perce who had shot his comrade. Quickly snubbing the braid on the high horn of his saddle, he spoke to his horse, and the highly trained animal swerved. The Nez Perce was dragged almost from behind the rock before suddenly the quarter-inch loop cut through his neck.
Jeez.
Quarter-inch.
Yeah.
That's a thin rope,
right.
dude. There was no use in Pancho snapping the Indian's head to Big Anton, for Big Anton was dead. Instead, he sent it rolling over the rocks to Liver-Eating Johnson. The gift came handy, for Johnson had emptied his rifle in 6-shooters and had only his bowie with which to meet one oncoming Indian still on horseback. Reaching quickly, he seized the gruesome object which rolled toward him and hurled it at his live foe. The two heads smashed together. The mounted Nez Perce pitched to the ground. Now Johnson rushed out with his knife. From behind the rocks, mountain men and Indians raced toward the canyon's mouth. Seizing riderless horses, the warriors of 3 tribes mounted to pursue what few surviving Nez Perces fled. Dude, he
grabbed
beheads
dude's
dude
head
with a riata and then throws it to Johnson, whips it to Johnson. Johnson uses it to throw at an oncoming Indian. Like, dude, I want to see this. I want to see this movie.
Yeah.
I mean, I mean, some of this just, it's possible. It's possible. It just seems like wild.
No.
Wild. But, man, what a story.
Like grabbing the dude's head as it's rolling by the hair to like.
I'm sure it's a pretty good weapon, right? Like, long-haired Indian, and you just like whip that thing around.
Like throwing a light rock, I guess.
Okay, so when Johnson and his comrades began the tally of the dead on both sides, they could not find Mariano and Pete, their Ute watchers. Johnson felt some concern that ahead with the Utes they might have fallen into the ambush prepared for all. But soon enough, Delgue pointed down the canyon to where they came. The leader of the Utes rode freely between them, but with Mariano's 6-shooter pointed steadily toward him. As the 3 rode close, Johnson could see that the Ute's face was covered with blood. From time to time, Arkansas Pete slapped him with the fresh scalps of his tribesmen. "Para el Capitan," said Mariano as he forced the Ute to ride before Johnson. "Saved him for you, liver-eating," cried Pete in good humor. Johnson took one great step, grasped the captive, and threw him to the ground. The Ute sprang at once to his feet, his face scowling black hatred. The trappers gathered round, each with his own advice as to how best a renegade might be disposed of. You wouldn't want to be that guy.
Mm-mm.
Arkansas Pete slapped him once again with the hardening pair of scalps. The Ute quivered with his contempt for those who would bait him thus unarmed. "Traitor," Johnson said, and he waved back the ring of mountain men and Indians. "Traitor, me and ye as a goin' ter hug." Okay, traitor, we're going to hug. "Throw him your knife, Mariano." Johnson himself stood empty-handed, his own knife untouched in his belt. That's some confidence.
Yeah, right.
I had read in the Daniel Boone story that the natives, Indians, typically were 160 pounds, 70, a little bit smaller than these big, like, 240-pound
mountain men,
6-something, like cave, like
yeah,
Neanderthal men who were there. In the book, in the history, it says, and again, it's written by the victors, but it says that on average, these white guys were way bigger. Now, also 200 years ago, white men in general were a lot smaller than they are today. Like,
right.
We've gotten bigger than we were back then. Like the average height was like 5'8" or something, and now it's like 5'10".
Yeah,
it might have been shorter, 5'5". Like, it's crazy how small in stature people were, and now they're not. It's interesting. I don't know what's going on there.
Well, shoot, just look at the obesity levels back in the 70s.
Yeah, I mean,
nothing hardly. Yeah.
So, but big and strong. But so he's like, "Give him your knife," The Ute, powerfully built, eager to kill even one of his foes, caught Mariano's knife as it sailed through the air. His one darting movement became a leap toward Johnson, but Johnson's moccasined foot caught his wrist and sent the weapon flying. Johnson first struck him as he stood astonished between the eyes. He fell heavily, but in an instant he was back on his feet. Once again he caught the blade that Mariano sent whirling back to him. Once again he sprang forward, this time for an upward slash, but blinded perhaps by rage at having even once been disarmed by an adversary using no weapons, he held his knife low too soon. Even as his weapon cleaved mightily upward, the crow-killer, throwing himself to one side, at the same time brought up his foot with a kick that lifted the Ute 2 feet in the air. Still agile, the Ute whirled, but only to take another kick beneath the chin. His teeth were driven together. He fell flat and nerveless on his back. Stepping over him, Johnson took the blade from his hand and swiftly scalped him. But he would allow no more play with a still living, suffering Indian. He returned the knife to Mariano and at once cut the Ute's throat. One more for Mad Mose, Johnson said.
Gosh, that kick. Like it's
quick,
so
powerful.
deadly.
Interesting, right? Mariano turned next to the merciful killing of the Nez Perce wounded, already scalped by the Shoshone. Johnson went to the dead body of Big Antone. Slickest hand would ever throw a sticker, he told Pancho Robles, seated there. Next he went to where Hatchet Jack, instead of chopping his dead foe's flesh, as was his custom, sat by his dead friend Mad Mose. Mose lay where he had fallen among the rocks. His matted beard was full of blood, coughed from his chest wound. Surely it seemed he must have been dead before he fell from his horse. Yet even now he seemed to be trying to roll over, trying to scramble to his feet, trying to rise, and his hatchet was still in hand. Only the naked spot on the top of his head, where he had been scalped long ago by a Blackfoot tomahawk, proved by its lack of beating pulse that Mose was dead indeed. Hatchet Jack had brushed the gray hair back from the old man's eyes, and he fanned away the desert gnats. Many there's a red Indian who we hounded off this earth together, Jack cried. We know that, Jack, said the crow-killer. He was like a father to me. Johnson seemed to speak once more, then cleared his throat and turned away. Come on now, liver-eater, Delgue urged. No use to keep his secret now. No use to keep your secret now. Tell Jack who Mose was. And Johnson turned and looked once more at his dead friend. He was John Morgan.
What? Oh, jeez. That's funny because I was thinking about okay, he was been scalped, but I didn't really put two and two together.
Crazy woman's husband.
Yep.
Is Mad Mose.
Yep.
Dude, I didn't see that coming. So that dude was cantankerous. Remember, he had the ego to think this and that.
Right.
Got scalped, remember, but survived, escaped those Indians. So he just went out and he just been killing everybody he could. See, again, they killed his children. His daughter, raped her, tomahawked her, and then scalped her and killed his two boys.
Yep.
And his wife went crazy. He never went back to a crazy woman.
No.
And all he's been doing is killing as many Indians as he can.
Yep.
That's an angry man.
Yeah.
Nothing left to live for.
I mean, that's
driven to the brink.
Just a straight black heart.
But at the same time, they're all sad because Mad Mose is a dear friend.
Yeah. Right.
And they killed a lot of Indians together. And so Delgue says, just tell everybody who he is. He's dead already. You might as well tell everybody. And so Johnson said it was John Morgan, husband to crazy woman on the mussel shell.
Jeez.
None of Johnson's hearers thought to ask how he had known or whether he had confirmation from Mad Mose. If Johnson spoke thus positively, he knew. Nor did any of them ask why he had kept such a secret. Mad John Morgan and his wife could be of little comfort to one another, and if perhaps sometimes sane, John Morgan must be let to decide for himself what life he should lead after his family's disaster. So he's called Mad Mose and she's called Crazy Woman.
Yeah.
They're both nuts.
Yeah. Oh, man.
But the mountain men did demand that Johnson tell Mose Morgan's story, even that part of it which they most of them knew. So Johnson did tell once more of the Morgans camping for wagon repairs and some rest by the mussel shell. Perhaps it seemed to some of them now for the first time that the liver eater knew more details of the Morgan story through their weeks of peace there and their one afternoon of horror than he could barely have learned from Crazy Woman. So he learned some of that because Crazy Woman never was crazy.
Yeah.
So how do you know all this stuff? Because John Morgan, Mad Mose. Now he told how John Morgan, bound and scalped and slashed and carried away by the Blackfeet after they had killed his children, escaped in his first night of captivity and then roamed the mountains demented. He's been with Jack most of their time since, Hatchet Jack, Johnson concluded. I know Jack would take care of him. Bless you, liver eater, said the hatchet man. Bless your heart. The mountain men buried Big Antone and Mad Mose on their last battlefield. The Flatheads, Crows, and Shoshone tied their few dead to the backs of the Nez Perce ponies for the long ride home. One, a green young trapper from the Yellowstone, drew laughs from mountain men and Indians alike by asking, "Ain't we going to bury these Indians?" He meant the 63 Nez Perce warriors whose bodies were piled together. No need, young hombre, Mariano Modeno answered him, and Mariano pointed to where, in the vast blue sky, specks sailed warily in wide circles. Observing his victim's repressed shudder, Mariano went on for the benefit of all of his audience. I was too hasty. I should have let the birds at them before they died.
You're basically like, I don't give a crap.
I should have let these guys been picked alive by these birds. Wild. So hard times. I mean, different world, right?
Right.
And I think I mentioned it before in one of these books, one of these readings, how once they didn't have Indians to fight and they weren't under constant attack and there wasn't these blood feuds and all this warring between human beings, these guys really felt like there was no point in living anymore.
Yep.
Like part of the drive of being out there is being out there with the constant danger and the different human battles that happen.
Yep.
And Daniel Boone kind of says something 100 years before this, 150 years before this, where he's saying something to the effect of where the Indians were left, so did the game. That all the best hunting and trapping and fishing and everything was where the Indians still lived.
Yeah. Whenever
the Indians were routed and the white and the European settlers moved in, the game disappeared. And wildlife was completely crushed and then replaced with domestic animals.
Right.
And that westward expansion, as they just wiped out entire vast communities of nature, that was difficult for someone like Daniel Boone, who loved hunting and trapping. But he also did it at a scale that contributed to the loss,
right?
As well.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like sort of this catch-22.
You take 15 guys of Daniel Boone's caliber, and it's like, I mean, they can wipe out a lot of game.
He said he killed 100 bears in a day or 2 days or something. They killed. They just. We'll get to those figures. I don't remember what they are, but they're insane like that.
Yeah,
they're a lot. Not in a day, but in like 1 month period or something.
Yeah.
I think that he says this. He says that as he moves west, he wants to be where the Indians are because the game is there, you know. And there's something about the Indians and being under the threat of being caught and outwitting Indians and staying in cane thickets and things like that. All of that is part of the whole adventure.
Yeah.
And to remove the danger of being killed by Indians makes the thing way less adventurous.
Just boring.
Just boring. So think about that the next time you're out there. Because I was out there with my dad hunting, and I'm like, what if I was doing this, but I had to like watch my back about being killed by
being in grizzly country is one thing, but it's
But
like,
what if other hunters might get you at any
Right.
time? Like, you got to watch out for that too. I'd be camping different. I'd be hunting different. I'd
oh
be like,
yeah, like
everything would be so different.
totally different. I mean, like I'm coming bebopping out the trail like 10 miles, like not a care in the world, you know.
It's just a different. It's different. It's food for thought. So, hope you're enjoying the series. Tune in for the next episode. Don't forget to support us if you like what we do. We have tons of partners. You can always find links to the websites and the partners and the discount codes that you'll get in the description fields of our videos. I recommend Mountain Ops, Ignite, Yeti, the Mountain Ops Blaze Shots. I recommend the CBD Sleep Gummies and CBD Gummies from Stealthy Nutrition.
Yes.
Glassing Pad from Lampers. His rifle cover is excellent. If you just need gear across the board, shop at Go Hunt. It's a hunting company owned by all hunters, basically, and they carry a vast array of hunting products, especially the ones that we like to use.
Yep.
And you get a discount when you shop over there and you use the code Gritty. And I guess Peaks Equipment. Check out the headlamp, the gaiters, and the poles, and more products to come. Use the code Gritty over there. You get a good discount. And that helps Peaks, which is our partner, helps us, and you win as well. So we appreciate you. Thank you for tuning in. And as always, stay gritty.